It was Labor Day 2023. I was doing an online high-intensity internal workout, something I had just gotten into, a little piece of structure of trying to be healthy. I pulled my long blonde hair back in a ponytail and adjusted my black sports bra. Ryker had wandered off to my room with his iPad. Looking back, thank God, he didn't want to be near the music of my workout because he couldn't hear his video. Little miracles. Little ways God was already working. I was maybe 5 minutes in, just finishing the warm-up. I was hot, and that stuck out to me because normally Aubreigh would already have turned the air down before bed. She hated being warm. She always thought it was hot. I didn't like being cold, so she would often get up and turn the air down after I went to bed. It's just something she always did. But the house was still warm, which felt strange, not alarming, just different. I walked to adjust the thermostat. The thermostat was in the hallway that branched off from the living room. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her vanity on the floor. I laughed to myself, just a little. Oh my goodness, girl, I thought. You're already taking it apart. She'd just been adding new vanities to the Amazon cart the day before, showing me which ones she liked, dreaming out loud about which one might be her early Christmas present. Christmas was still months away, but that was just how we were. If she wanted something and I could make it happen, I did. She knew it. I knew it. That was our thing. So when I saw the vanity on the ground, my first thought wasn't fear. It was her being her, a little ahead of herself, already assuming I was going to order the new one, as I often did. It's funny now, in a way I can barely admit, that I thought that in those 2 seconds. But everything changed in the next breath. And then I saw her legs. Purple. Mottled, hanging head tilted, not moving. My first thought, leggings. Just leggings. It has to be purple leggings. My brain just couldn't process it. I now hate the color purple. What I know now, but couldn't grasp then, is that when someone passes from hanging, the pressure cuts off blood circulation. Gravity causes the blood to settle in the lower parts of the body, and without the heart pumping, the blood pools. It turns the skin purple, marbled, bruised looking. It's called livor mortis, one of the early signs after death. This is often called lividity as well. The color will stay, even though rigor mortis sets in. But at that moment, I didn't think about it medically. I didn't think logically. I thought like a mother. Everything inside me shattered. But in those first few seconds, the thought that she might be gone didn't even cross my mind. This was an attempt. I told myself, I can save her. I can get her down. I can fix this. There wasn't time to panic. I just moved. I ran to her. I tried to lift her. I wrapped my arms around her legs and held her up, trying desperately to create slack in the rope. My hands were shaking. My voice broke open. I screamed, "Taylor!" Taylor came running. Panic set in. I screamed at her to grab a knife, but it was too dull. I tried to cut the rope while holding Aubreigh up. Who has a dull knife? I was still holding Aubreigh, my arms around her body, my soul screaming. Taylor ran again fast and brought back another knife. She cut the rope and Aubreigh collapsed onto me. Her whole body fell onto me. He laid her on the bed. Her legs were dangling. Her feet were purple. I hate purple. I tried to think. Circulation. I had to help with circulation. I grabbed the vanity stool and propped her legs up. I started CPR. I had been trained. I remembered the instructions to push hard enough to break ribs if necessary, so I did. I pushed and pushed. Fluid came from her mouth, and I thought it was vomit at first, but it wasn't. I didn't stop. Taylor was on the phone with 911. I could hear her and not hear her at the same time. Everything was happening all at once, and yes, nothing was moving fast enough. Her face was cold, her legs, her toes, a color I can't even put into words. Her hands were rigid, and still I couldn't believe she wasn't coming back. I screamed at them. Give her oxygen. I begged God. Begged. Please give her back. You've brought others back. Bring her by to me. Please, God, bring her back. I refused to leave her. Lying beside her, I cradled her face in my hand, kissed her cheek, and stayed with her. Then my best friend Nick arrived. Then my brother Jeff. Time blurred. My body was there, but my soul was cracked wide open. A police officer stayed in the room with me. He didn't say much. He just stood there, quietly letting me be with her. Maybe he knew there was no separating a mother from her child in that moment. Time passed. I don't know how much. Then the investigator arrived. They needed to get in the room. They needed me to leave. Initially, I refused. I was going to lie there and die from heartbreak with her. I was never leaving. They pleaded with me, Nick, Taylor, and Jeff. The officers assured me I would get to go back in there and be with her. I wasn't ready. I needed more time, more of her. They nearly begged me, almost had to drag me, though not physically. My soul had to be torn away. I made them promise that I could come back to her, and only then did I move. I walked out of Aubrey's room and back into the living room. I saw the weights from my workout, and I picked them up and threw them with everything I had. Oh, the irony that they too were purple. I hate purple. The floor cracked. I collapsed. I just fell to the floor into myself. My knees pulled up to my chest, arms wrapped tight around them like I was trying to hold myself together because everything inside me was breaking apart. My back curved forward, shoulders trembling, chin pressed down. I folded into the smallest shape I could make, as if I made myself small enough I could hide from the pain, as if shrinking would make the world less heavy, as if curling inward could stitch the broken parts together. My hands crawled up my face, fingers tangling in my hair, gripping my scalp as if I could physically wrench myself awake from the nightmare. I rocked the way a child does when they need to be soothed. An instinctive, useless motion. There was no comfort, only the raw, hot pain that burned behind my eyes, in my throat, in the hollow of my stomach. Every breath felt like a mile. Each inhale a struggle, each exhale another piece of me gone. But there's no comfort in a moment like that. I was balled up on the floor, a mother shattered into pieces, no words, no oxygen, no time, just prayer and the kind of grief that lives in your bones. That position wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. I felt like I was lower than the ground. The heaviness weighed on me, making it hard to exhale. I was stripped of everything but the ache. And I stayed there because there was nowhere else to be. Sound came out of me, the kind of sound that doesn't come from your throat. It comes from the soul, a scream that clawed its way out of me, not a cry, not a sob, but a wail. Screams from the depths of my soul, a mother's soul. One that never really stops, screams that seem to lift from the deepest place inside my bones. It wasn't a sound I recognized. It was older and fiercer than language. I let it roar, taking sips of air when I could. I rocked back and forth, my body convulsed with sobs and sounds I couldn't control. My forehead pressed in and against the ground, like I was trying to bury myself in it, trying to disappear and trying to sink into something that didn't feel like this nightmare. I let the scream go until my voice rattled and I could only take small, jagged sips of air, the tremors running through my limbs. No words, just pain, wailing from a place I didn't know existed inside me. People moved around me. Voices, questions, shoes on tile, but it was all far away like a radio turned to a station I couldn't reach. Everything blurred into the ache. There were police officers, EMTs, investigators, and strangers with so many questions. But I couldn't hear any of it clearly. Everything was blurry. My soul was screaming too loud for anything else to make sense. The coroner arrived. Someone I had gone to high school with, of all people. Names and faces, questions that I could not focus on. All that mattered was the hollow where my daughter used to be, the tiny space that used to hold her laugh. I stayed on the floor because there was nowhere else that felt like the right place to be. My body was doing the only thing it could to contain a grief that wanted to spill me out. No words could hold it. I stayed outside restless. I didn't know what happened behind that door, and maybe I didn't want to. All I knew was that it was keeping me from her. Finally. They told me I could go back in. I didn't know exactly what had taken place in that room while I waited, and maybe I didn't need to. The chaos from before, where everything had been toppled, was gone. I took in the room in a few slow, terrible seconds. The vanity upright, the scattered things gone. Someone had straightened things up. In its place was a heartbreaking kind of stillness. My eyes found her instantly. She had been gently turned, her head placed onto her pillow, her blanket pulled up and tucked around her small frame. Her head rested as though someone had just come in to say goodnight. It almost looked like I could lean down, whisper her name, and she might stir. Sat on her vanity stool right beside her bed because I did not know where else to sit. I stared until my eyes burned, and then I reached. I touched her skin like I was trying to check whether she was real. I held her hands as if I could press breath back into them. I brushed hair from her face and kissed the soft places on her cheek until each kiss felt like a small private promise. I just stared at her. I memorized the slope of her nose, the line of her jaw, the way her lashes lay like little shadows. I knew it would be the last time I'd ever see her in our home. In her home. In the home where I loved her and raised her. In that place, I thought she felt safe because she was in that home. I kept saying every small thing to myself so that later, when the room emptied and the world tried to move on, I would still have each detail. Time didn't move in minutes anymore. It bent and blurred. I don't know how long I sat there, only that at some point the coroner came in and spoke to me in a voice both gentle and impossibly practical. When I was ready, he said they would be taking her to the funeral home. I saw a stretcher at the edge of my vision, the clinic wheel of it moving like a clock I could not stop. The room, while a moment before had housed every ordinary piece of our life, began to shrink around that single fact. I would have to make decisions next.
Decisions about my daughter, my baby, a human I had grown and missed and loved with everything in me. Now she was a body that needed arrangements. Nothing made sense.
My soul couldn't comprehend it. My body couldn't process it. My mind refused to. I let go of Aubreigh's body, walked into the living room, and allowed them the space to put her in the body bag. And she was quickly moved onto a stretcher. As they rolled her out into the living room, they paused and started to zip it up. I rushed back over to her. I lay over her, refusing to let them zip her face into a bag. My brother Jeff and Nick gently pulled me off of Aubreigh, and I stood next to them, frozen as I watched the authorities take my baby girl away. I just watched. I watched my baby leave our home. I watched her leave, knowing she would never come back through that door again. I just stared. Frozen, blank, hollow. I don't remember much more of that day. It blurs and fades. People's faces were around me, polite, practiced, asking questions I could not answer. Who should we call? What can we do? One heard the words, like someone speaking through water, but my head was full of nothing. They asked me practical things because that is what adults do in moments they cannot live inside. What are you going to tell Ryker? I hadn't even reached that corner of my mind. My despair had swallowed everything. I couldn't see past the breath of my own pain to imagine how to shape words for a 6-year-old. I hadn't even thought that far. My despair had swallowed everything, while the rest of the house was so heavy with devastation. In that bedroom, there was this strange stillness, almost sacred. Ryker stayed safe and undisturbed, wrapped in more than just his blanket, wrapped in love, in watchfulness, and in a peace that could only have been divine. Somehow Ryker didn't hear a thing. He was in my bedroom, the farthest room from the living room and from Aubreigh's room. Taylor was there, moving in and out like a quiet guard, checking on him over and over. She was just a girl herself, but that day she was in full action, slipping in every now and then to ask, "Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you need anything?" But Ryker, no questions, no wandering, no interruptions, no awareness. That was unheard of for Ryker. Normally, he'd be by my side in an instant, needing me, asking what was going on, being a busybody, but not that day. And I know God was with him. I believe with everything in me that God, or Jesus, lay beside Ryker in that bed. He wrapped him in peace, comfort, and protection so strongly that nothing could reach him. Not even the screams of his mother. Not the chaos. Not the devastation happening just a few walls away. Maybe it was still Aubreigh's spirit in the house, lying with him, protecting him one last time. Regardless, somehow and only by grace from above, Ryker stayed in that room, in that bed, for 6 hours. It was a miracle, a real divine miracle. When Taylor and I finally walked into his room around 4, everything felt impossible to say. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my sweet 6-year-old boy, Aubreigh's best friend, his hair mussed, his eyes wide with the oddness of the day. My voice broke before I could shape the sentence. "I have to tell you something," said. It felt like the only sentence I could find. He looked up, confused, innocent. "Sissy's not with us anymore," I said. "Aubreigh went to heaven to be with Jesus." He just stared at me, confused, quiet, and then he cried. It was more from the shock, from seeing us in pain, from the energy in the room. I don't think he fully understood just yet what I was talking about, because later he would still walk through the house and look for her, expecting her to be in places she had always been, at the table by the sink, in the doorway. That searching for that ordinary, hopeful habit of a child hit me like a fresh wound every time. He was still his best friend. He was still the little boy who wanted to play and be held and be told everything would be all right. I don't remember the rest of that day in clear order. It all becomes a haze of slow movements and clipped conversations of people arranging things that no longer mattered, and the hollow ritual of it all. It hadn't sunk in. How could it? The worst thing that could happen to a family was happening to us. We never discussed something this complex and unimaginable before. It wouldn't. Not yet. Not for any of us. The permanence. That part would take time, if ever. That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open, mind spinning, body trembling, and I only had two thoughts, two desperate, pleading prayers. God, please take her to heaven. God, please let it have been quick. I just kept repeating those two things like a mantra to the heavens. I had always been taught that suicide meant hell. If you take your own life, you can't ask for forgiveness. Therefore, you don't go to heaven. And I begged God not to let that be true. Please, Lord, she was a child. She loved you. She had such a kind heart. Please take her to heaven. I will take her place if I have to. Please take her, God. And then there was the second fear. I had heard horror stories about how long it can take. The suffering, the gasping, the regret. And I couldn't bear it. I couldn't live if I thought my baby struggled like that. I couldn't stop imagining the worst, as if it could get much worse. I couldn't survive if she had suffered in those last moments. So I prayed again, God, let it have been quick. Please, please, God, let it have been quick. I even searched the internet for information about it, searching for answers in the dark. No rest, no peace, just pleading.